Okay, this is a meeting of the Heritage Advisory Committee of Quinte West. I am calling this meeting to order at 3 p.m. on May 26, 2025. So that is our first order of business. Our next order of business is disclosure of pecuniary interest. If anyone needs to make that disclosure at this point, nope. So then we move on to number 3, which is the approval of the agenda. So we all have a copy of the agenda for today. Would someone like to move that the agenda be approved? Francis moves that the agenda is approved. Any seconders? Doug moves that the seconds that the agenda be approved. All in favor? Yay. Unanimous vote that the agenda be approved. Next up, we have approval of the minutes from April 14th, which was our special meeting call of the chair. Has everyone had a chance to look at these, and are there any amendments to the minutes? Would anyone like to make any amendments? No? Okay, can someone move that the minutes from April 14th? Okay, George moves that the minutes from April 14th be accepted. Seconder? Doug seconds. All in favor? Unanimous vote to approve the minutes from April 14th. Okay, so next up we have public input and delegations. I don't think there are any. Correspondence. And then we have staff reports. Is there anything? No. So then we move right into new and other business. And first up we have Kelly with the Heritage Tax Rebate Program.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to give you an update. We had Caleb and Ryan at our last meeting talking about the municipality implementing a tax rebate for heritage properties, and a report was taken to council, and council did approve implementing this program at the 40% recommended tax relief that your committee had recommended. There's still a policy document, I think, if I'm getting the terminology right, that has to be created to implement it. So it's not a right away thing, but it's on the road to moving forward. So I just wanted to give you guys that update.
Thank you. And then we have Kelly also with addressing the structure of the committee, which I believe we raised as a question in an email to you.
So I think we've had this conversation before. As per your terms of reference, you have membership of 4 public members and 1 on council. And because no one volunteered on council to be a member of the committee, it automatically goes to the mayor. So the mayor is your council representative. I think if you guys really wanted to have a council member sit on the committee with you in these meetings, you may want to think about, what's the word, canvassing other members in council to find out who might have some interest in heritage and seeing if they would be willing to be on this committee, and then we could they could deal with that at council. Otherwise, it's just ex officio to the mayor for this committee.
Okay. So in our unofficial meeting and discussions, I think Francis, right, and I'll ask Francis to address this, raised the point of if a recommendation or a decision that's made with the involvement of this committee is challenged legally, would the lack of would the lack of participation of a council member be an issue in that situation?
Your recommendation is going to council, so I don't see that anyone would challenge your recommendation at this point. It would be whatever council then would approve.
Francis, did you want to add anything, or?
I think I would just add that I think we can talk about it afterwards, but I'd be happy to canvass councillors and ask one of them to participate in this process. Perhaps they need an explanation of what the process is, how important it is to the community, and we'll get them to be enthusiastic as we are. One or more, perhaps, once they know what it's all about.
Thank you, Francis. Okay, next up we have, is that it for committee structure? We've addressed, okay, thank you very much. Davina with the issue of terms of reference to be developed for heritage impact assessments.
Yeah, through the chair, currently the city does not have a terms of reference for a heritage impact assessment, which is a document that's completed by the owner or representative of designated properties who apply for permission to alter their property. As I would say that it would be a useful tool, it wouldn't be necessary as the city does follow the process in the toolkit that require property owners to apply for a heritage building permit. And during that process, there is an evaluation that touches base on protecting attributes that include materials, designs that speak to the heritage attributes. And given our limited staff resources, it would be best to go through the process as we start to designate.
Okay, thank you. Francis, did you want to just address that?
I think at some point, maybe when the finances are available, and again, maybe talking to counselors to help them understand the process. I know myself as the person who's prepared HIAs for other communities, that there are differences in what's required, and that there has, in the past 5 years, I would say, there's a standardization that's become pretty common, and that when I've reviewed past, whenever I work in a new community, I look to see what other people have done in the past. And 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the documents tended to be several pages long, and now they are generally almost 100 pages long. And I think what's important for the community to understand, and we could promote this, is that for better or for worse, it's one way for a community to actually get really good data on the community, on the community within, or the neighborhood within the community, and then narrow down all the way to whatever project that is. And in some ways, I don't want to say it's free data, but it's free information that the community can then use as a resource, not only for finding additional information for a property in that area, and the players, whoever was involved, but also it helps the next person who might have a house next door, 2 doors down, or what have you. Then they can rely on that document. So I think it's important that we have a terms of reference that says, what it is that we're looking for. And even if at first, if we feel that, there aren't the resources out there and we don't want to put an extra burden on the applicants, that we could narrow the focus and keep it pretty straightforward. But have at least a list of minimum things that we would need to have before we move ahead with work on a property, essentially. So I think it's something that we should pursue when the resources are available.
Okay, is that everything, Davina? Yes, thank you very much. Okay, so on to our last item. We are blitzing through things. So this is under my name and about budget and incentives. And I think, a lot of our discussion in our unofficial meetings and in these meetings as well has been about, how we go about doing things and how we pay for them. So, we do have a short list of properties that we would like, that 3 of them were brought forward at the last meeting, I think, and then a 4th one has been identified as potentially of interest as well on Spring Street, and we have those addresses that we can share. They didn't make it onto the agenda. And so what I think what we need to understand as a committee is what resources could potentially be available to us, and how do we go about accessing those? Because I think that's probably like, what do we, on a practical basis, what do we need to do in order to bring some of the resources to our committee to actually start moving forward on a practical basis?
So I think there's maybe two avenues that you as a committee could look at. If you wanted to have a standing budget as your committee, I think that you would have to put together how much that would be, what the money would be used for, that we could take that to council during the budget budgeting process, because we do that in the fall, typically in the fall when we're doing that. So I think that might be one avenue that you would move forward with, because we'll be doing that in 2025 for 2026 budget, to get a line item added there. Or if there's something specific, some specific research that you want done perhaps on those four properties that you mentioned, figuring out what kind of money we're looking at, and it would be a specific ask back to council to say, here's how much we would anticipate a researcher would cost in order to do this on these four properties, and that could be a specific request.
Thank you. So this would be for a consultant on top of the work that Davina could do for us. That would be, so it would be estimating the amount of money, and then that would go to council at their next meeting. Whoops. I did not mean to use the gavel. I don't think it's necessary. That would go to council at their next meeting, and then that money would be relatively shortly available to us to move forward, as opposed to waiting for the fall. And in the fall, it would be an item that would be included in the budget for the following year. Okay. Am I understanding that correctly?
That would be my understanding of it, yeah.
Does anyone have any other comments about budget and incentives, things that might come up? Francis?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was talking to staff earlier about one of the things that we need to do, perhaps to, first the choice of projects and how we approach which project we're going to move ahead with, and have some more in-camera discussions about that. But as well, I think moving on, when I did the research for my own property through the Trenton Library here, I was able to access the microfiche collection. But then later on I discovered that the other municipalities have some of our newspapers, the Trenton Herald and Examiner, I think they were called. And some issues were digitized, and that meant that they're in PDF form and can easily be searched through the library. Actually, you didn't even have to leave your own home. What I was wondering about is a process where we would ask the library to consider digitizing their collection of the Trenton Herald and the other newspapers that were around in the sort of 1880s through to the 1940s, and then maybe see if they can access the rest of the collection, because they've only got a limited amount, I think about 10 or 15 years. And that would make the search for any resident or anyone else who's interested in history, would make the search much easier, because you can just use search terms to find anything. So whether it's an address or whether you're looking for an individual or what have you, digitizing those. And then perhaps the library could get funding from other sources as well. It doesn't necessarily have to come from municipal budgets, but there are other sources of funding that they could access, heritage funding even through the federal government. And I think having this kind of multiple prong approach to this would mean that our job as a committee might be easier as we find different ways of making all this work. So that would be a recommendation.
Thank you, Francis. Any comment on that, Davina or Kelly? Okay, thank you. Any other comments on incentives? I think another incentive that came up as a possibility was to issue plaques to existing properties and to any properties that are identified. I think one of the things that didn't make it onto here and is new or other business is the letter that Davina was going to draft. Is that something that's in progress, or to prospective property owners? Yeah.
Through the chair, yeah. We do have a draft from, I'm not too sure which meeting it was, but it is in a staff report, yeah.
Oh, it is, okay. Yeah. So we'll have to go back to that. Sorry, that's my bad memory.
If I may, I think one of the things too is to, within that draft, and maybe it's already there, I'm not sure, but talk about the advantages of having a building designated. You know, and maybe discuss some of the what people consider negatives that are sometimes myths that need to be clarified. So I think I know other cities will include that when they first look at a listing a building. They'll have a second page that says, hey, by the way, this is what it means to list a building. And the province and other municipalities, what have you, they have examples that we can kind of look at to base ours on. Because I think it's I think the industry overall feels that, if you have a house and it's going to be designated, that it's a bad thing, and I don't think it is at all, having owned one and having been on both sides of the fence on this issue. So I think we should probably be ready before we even consider sending out our first notice, having that document that says, hey, by the way, it's not really bad to be designated. It's actually a good thing, and it's about pride in the community and your own building. So.
The conversation about incentives prompted me to think of the letter that it could, if we did manage to bring some incentives together and have a budget for them, that could be referred to in the letter as well. Davina.
Yeah, through the chair, I will share that draft with you again, and then you're able to comment on it, and we can draft it. Yeah.
Thank you. Is there any other business, any new business arising that hasn't been addressed in the agenda? Anything else that has come up? So I think that the next step then is for us as a committee to specifically identify how many properties, we would say 2 to begin with, that are 1 and 2 on our list, and put together a potential budget for research related to those 2 properties. And that would be a priority item for us moving forward. Would that be accurate to say? Okay. Thank you. Is there anything else that we need to discuss today? Any other business?
Do we get to know what the 2 are? The 2 properties?
Well, I think right now, but I feel it's Canterbury Hall, 94 King Street West. And I think the second one, we might need to have more discussion and talk about, if we're, and consider, realistically. I think Canterbury Hall was an agreed upon one. 41 Dundas Street West was one. And then the third one was, is it 178 Spring Street, I think, which came up after the meeting. So I think we need to put our heads together again and be specific about that before moving forward. Thank you. Anything else to be discussed? If not, I guess I will call an adjournment today at 3:20. That is the fastest meeting I think we've ever had. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.